Time to take a look now at what's grabbing headlines in the French papers. France Filmno is in studio. Morning, France. Tell me, we're going to start a lot of people looking at what is a particularly vicious flu here in France.
That's right. From personal experience, I can tell you for sure that it's very vicious.
It's not a man flu here, it's a real flu.
It's a real flu, exactly. Well, Aujourd'hui en France focuses on this particularly vicious epidemic that we're having here in France that's especially hard on old people. You can see here the front page of Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien talking about the deadly winter. Now, Aujourd'hui en France wonders, are we witnessing a health crisis similar to a deadly heat wave that hit France in 2003 that killed 10,000 people, especially elderly people at that time as well. And Le Parisien is focusing today on new figures that were published by French health authorities. The beginning of 2015 has been marked by an abnormally high death rate, 16% higher than usual, and especially among people older than 65. And these, according to Aujourd'hui en France, health officials say this is largely due to the flu. Now, you can see, if we can take a look again at Le Parisien, it talks about the biggest massacre in 5 years, and the consequence of this is that funeral services are overrun, and as are emergency rooms.
Now, Le Parisien also points out that it's not just here in France that we're suffering.
That's right. This is across Europe. Le Parisien talks about a European phenomenon. So many countries are also facing this abnormally high death rate. Health staff say that the problem is that too few people are getting the virus vaccine. But another problem, according to Aujourd'hui en France, is the fact that the virus has mutated, which means that the vaccine isn't as effective as it used to be. Now, the only good news in all this is that over the last 2 weeks, health officials say that the epidemic has shown signs that it's calming down.
Great, that is good news, Florence. Moving on now to another story. Le Figaro is focusing on Westerners heading to Syria to fight against the Islamic State group. That's
right. Now, we often talk about young Westerners who are heading to Syria to fight in the ranks of the Islamic State group. Well, Le Figaro says that there's a parallel phenomenon going on the other side. And Le Figaro describes the situation. They're American, European. They've left their homes to join the ranks of Syrian Kurdish fighters, so fighters from the YPG who are fighting against the Islamic State group in Syria. They don't talk about jihad, they talk about shoresh. Now that means the fight or the struggle in Kurdish. And the journalist from Le Figaro met some of these fighters. One fighter's name is Sherwan, that's his war name. He's an American from Rhode Island who said he'd never left Rhode Island or really fought any war for that matter. And now he says, I'm in the complicated Middle East after a simple Google search, how to eliminate the Islamic State. And to quote one of his fellow fighters, they're the cancer, we're the surgeons.
Okay, but now there's also Le Monde is looking at an interview with a former jihadist who managed to get out of the radical group, which I imagine isn't easy.
He's actually a former jihadist from the 90s, actually. But I'll describe the article. It's very interesting. Nonetheless, his name is David Vella. He's 43 years old, and in the 1990s, he was a jihadist. He describes the downward spiral of radicalization and then how he cleansed himself. Those are his words. He says, I managed to detoxify myself. So in the 1990s, radical Islam led him to fight jihad in Afghanistan, and then he found himself associated with the 1995 terrorist attacks here in Paris. So he went to prison, actually. But he says that his recruitment and path towards radical Islam is very similar to what we're seeing today, these young people heading to Syria to fight alongside the Islamic State group. He says that video techniques have evolved, but the content is very much the same. He describes his situation. I was bored, without many prospects. I wanted authority and adventure, but then I got to the point where I wanted to give a meaning to my death, not my life, a spectacular meeting. So it's very interesting read today, especially in the light of what we're seeing, this wave of young Europeans going to Syria.
Yeah, indeed. Good insight to get into that mentality. Now, the French press briefly also looking at 2 surprising visits.
That's right. We were just talking about that visit from 2 French MPs and 2 senators to Damascus to meet with the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. This goes against official French policy. Of course, diplomatic relations have been cut off between the 2 countries since May 2000. 2012. But these parliamentarians, as they're called in French, say that it's important to renew ties with a regime that can play a key role in the fight against terrorism. This would follow in the footsteps of Germany, Great Britain, and Spain. To quote one of them, you have to choose between two evils. So anyway, that's getting a lot of attention today in the French press.
Okay, France, we know we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed for that.